So you've all heard about how your thyroid can control your metabolism, how it controls weight gain and weight loss. There's a lot of things that the thyroid controls and a lot of things that are connected to the thyroid. But one thing that I feel like is overlooked quite a bit is the connection with your thyroid and your brain metabolism and your mental health. So I wanted to go over with you a few different ways that this can happen, how it's connected, and even some thoughts and steps that you can take for how you can manage this. So one area I personally can vouch for this when I was going when I was on my thyroid journey, an area that really was troubling for me was the lack of concentration. And I had no idea that the lack of concentration, how much it was actually connected to my thyroid health. But if you're having a hard time like focusing, working on something like a task at hand, it could be due to your thyroid. So it might be something that you would want to investigate. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different reasons this can happen, but this was a really big one for me that I did not realize. The lack of concentration and brain fog, like walking into the room and forgetting what I was doing, having difficulty forming sentences, things like that. That's an area that I did not realize how much it was connected to my thyroid until my thyroid started improving and those things went away. Mood swings is another area, especially for women, everything's blamed on our hormones. When we get snappy or edgy and feeling like this hormonal type of thing, especially mood swings, it's always blamed on our hormones, our sex hormones. But the doctors usually don't investigate thyroid. This is a big connection to the thyroid because we have an interruption of metabolic activity of the brain that's connected to the thyroid. And so that's why we can get these pretty drastic mood swings when we do have an underactive thyroid. Anxiety is an area as well. So with hyper and hypothyroidism, this is actually a really big connection as well with anxiety, particularly severe anxiety, especially if we have something like Hashimoto's where we have antibodies present. It's really common to have pretty intense anxiety. And it can kind of come in waves. This is another area that I feel like does not get talked about either is how it can come and go. But there's a lot of connections and a lot of studies showing that anxiety disorders are often linked to hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism for that matter. And people with severe anxiety that's due to thyroid disorders, they usually experience like a lot of nervousness and fear and worry. And this was me. I was constantly worried about what was wrong with my body, what was wrong with my thyroid. I could not let go. So this is something that's very common as well. And even depression. Depression is an area that I really struggled with pretty intensely when my thyroid was underactive. And of course, the doctors just wanted to throw me on anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications, but never addressed it, never looked at, okay, well, it's actually because your thyroid's underactive. This is why you have depression. Let's work on your thyroid health instead of just throwing me on antidepressants. But the depressive tendencies, when people have thyroid disorders, it can be linked obviously to, hormones and things like that. But we have a lot of abnormalities of something called the it's HPT axis, so hypothalamic pituitary thyroid. So that connection, that axis, it gets all disconnected. And so people can really struggle with depression, even low motivation. So I talked about like lack of concentration, but low motivation. I mean, I know for me, when my thyroid was underactive, the last thing I felt like doing was pretty much anything. I did not feel like getting my task done. It was a struggle just for me, obviously not having the energy either, but I just did not have the motivation to do much of anything, and did not realize that this was so closely connected to my thyroid. Another area that I want to mention that's a very big connection when I was talking about mood swings is short temper. I definitely went through this. This was a really big one for me where I was just like, it didn't matter what was happening. I felt like I had a short fuse. It did not take much for me to get edgy or snappy at anyone or anything. I just did not have the patience at all for anything. This was definitely my thyroid. Again, there's a lot of things that are connected to this. And what's troubling and what's challenging when we have an underactive thyroid as well, even an overactive thyroid, but your sex hormones usually are connected as well. And so when we have the thyroid is off and then our adrenals also get off, and now we also have our sex hormones, they feed off of each other. And so that's why women can get the short temper, snappiness, edginess, anxiety, worry, fear. It just snowballs. It's very common with even more common, I feel like, with underactive thyroid. Now it can obviously happen with overactive, but more of these things are more common with underactive thyroid. And obviously, then we just start talking about, like, how do we fix this? What do we do with this? So the very, very first thing that I would actually start with is just make sure you're getting a full thyroid panel. That's the best thing you can do, is make sure that you are getting a full thyroid panel. Make sure that they are looking at all your numbers. So TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and then both thyroid antibodies, thyroid globulin, and thyroid peroxidase. These are where I would always start to make sure that you are getting a full picture. Now, these can still look normal. You can actually still have an underactive thyroid, and I've talked about this on here all the time. You can still have something like a cellular hypothyroidism, where your thyroid hormones aren't even going inside the cells. And it can happen for numerous different reasons, but this is why I do a lot of testing with my clients to figure that out. But my point of that is that if it does come back normal, that your thyroid panel looks good, it doesn't mean that it's ruled out. It doesn't mean that your thyroid hormones are doing their job. But this is a great place to start to make sure that you are getting a full thyroid panel, and absolutely look at those thyroid antibodies. That has to be done every single time, because that's a huge contributor to some of these symptoms that I'm mentioning that is connected to mental health and thyroid disease. Also start thinking about stress. So I can't emphasize this enough. I talk about it all the time, how stress is a huge factor for so many different things in the body. But when we have any sort of stress, so this could be internal, like a gut infection or poor nutrition or a virus, or external, you hate your job or you're stuck in traffic, things like that. Physical, mental, emotional are all the types of stressors we can have. They can contribute to a very, very large imbalance of your hormones, and your thyroid. This will also lead to low mood and even further thyroid issues. So stress can be a big factor here as to why you actually have thyroid issues in the first place, and also have all these mood disorders or mental health issues. Also keep in mind that I want to mention a little bit about serotonin. So serotonin levels can get very, very reduced when our thyroid hormones are low. So majority of serotonin is made in the gut. There's a lot of things that are made in the gut. This is why I actually do a stool test on every single one of my clients. But the majority of serotonin is made in the gut. So if we have really poor gut health, you are going to have a really hard time making serotonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone. It makes you feel very, very good. I always say we have to have serotonin on board. And since most of it is made in the gut, you might want to start doing some investigating into your gut health. Now, when I work with my clients, I do a stool test on every single one of them. Outside of doing a stool test, this is where you need to start thinking about, I need to cut out inflammatory foods. They can contribute to poor mental health, as well as poor gut health, which will in turn contribute to poor mental health. Start focusing on how do I calm my gut down. So obviously stress management is going to be big here, cutting out those inflammatory foods, making sure you're eating protein, carbohydrates, and fats kind of combined. Make sure you're balancing your meals so you're not stressing your body out by just loading up on carbs that aren't very good either. So fruits and vegetables, and protein sources, and then those healthy fats. Make sure you're kind of focusing on that. That always helps with the gut as well. Even drinking aloe juice. Aloe juice is so good for gut health. It actually lowers thyroid antibodies as well. Just like 1 to 2 ounces a day, that could be very good for the gut. As well. So start thinking about things like that, because it's not just about how do I fix my brain health. Yes, that's important, but the brain health gets affected because of what's going on with the thyroid, because of what's going on with the gut. So this is why, we're often told, yes, we have depression or anxiety, things like that, and mood disorders. It's a chemical imbalance. Sure, it is a chemical imbalance, but what's the root cause of it? Why is it even there? That's the investigation that I would start looking at. But the very first place I would start with, make sure you're getting that full thyroid panel, and that's going to be very, very important. And then if the thyroid panel comes back pretty good and you're like, I'm really having all these symptoms still, don't understand why, my thyroid panel looks good, that's when you might want to start investigating. Okay, what else am I missing here? How's my gut? How are my minerals? How is my adrenals and my sex hormones? Because they are probably the contributing factor here. And so that's why you might want to start digging for root causes. So, definitely let me know if you have any questions with this. I know it's a lot of information when we start thinking about mental health and the connection with thyroid. I know for me personally, on my own personal experience, I struggled with a lot of mental health stuff, and I have had nothing since I've pretty much put my thyroid condition in remission. I've had no symptoms for 9 years, and I was so severe with mine prior to that. So I can definitely vouch for it, that it is possible to get rid of all that, but it's just finding root causes and doing some investigating on yourself. So I would start there. And then, like I said, let me know if you have any questions. And then let me know below too, like, have you experienced this? What has been your experience with this?